Good day, everyone. My name is Jessica Porras, and I'm the Senior Manager for Education and Outreach at CAQH CORE. It's my pleasure to welcome you today to our Voluntary CORE Certification Basics webinar with a guest speaker from the CAQH CORE Authorized Testing Vendor Edifex. This webinar is a how-to of CORE certification, and we will lead you step by step through the CORE certification process and CORE certification testing, so you will know exactly what you need to do if you're interested in CORE certification. Before we begin, I would like to mention some logistical items. You can download a copy of today's presentation from the CAQH.org website. To do so, navigate to the CORE pull-down menu at the top of the CAQH.org welcome screen and select the CORE Education Events page. A link to the PDF version of the presentation can be found under the listing for today's webinar. On this slide, you can see a screenshot of the attendee GoToWebinar dashboard. You should see something that looks similar to this on the right side of your computer desktop. When joining today's session, it's possible you may have joined the audio portion of the webinar using your computer speakers by default. If possible, we would prefer you to join the webinar audio by telephone. To do this, please select the telephone audio button in the audio panel of your dashboard, and the dial-in information will be displayed. And make sure you enter your audio PIN, which is found under your dial-in information. We will save time at the end of today's program to responding to audience questions. You're encouraged to submit your questions at any time during this webinar by typing them into the questions panel of your dashboard. We do ask that when you submit your question, you identify the type of organization you're with so we can give you a more accurate response. We would like to thank today's guest speaker, Ashish Gandhi, Senior Project Manager at Edifex, for joining us today. Today we'll start off with a presentation from our CAQH CORE staff, who will give us an overview of CORE certification as well as take us through the CORE certification process. That will be followed by a presentation from Edifex on the testing process, and he will also walk us through the testing portal. We'll make sure to leave plenty of time to answer your pressing questions. So now, let's begin with our first presentation by CAQH CORE Senior Manager, Matthew Albright. Matthew?
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you all for joining us today. You're probably joining us today because you're considering whether to be CORE certified, or you are already planning on getting your organization or your product maybe CORE certified. And this webinar should give you the tools or the information to start thinking about what a project plan might look like for pursuing CORE certification. As a quick aside, Jessica said that if you have questions you want answered, to go ahead and input them in the webinar's text chat box there. We'll try to get to all of them, but if we don't, know that we'll respond by email to any questions that we don't answer today. So feel free to send us all kinds of questions, even those specific to your organization, because we will follow up on all of them. Next slide. So before we talk about voluntary CORE certification itself, let's review what the State of the Union is in terms of what the federal government has mandated for operating rules and certification. As you can see by the slide, and as most of you are probably aware, operating rules have been mandated for phases 1, 2, and 3. So you look at those first two columns, operating rules have been mandated for use by all HIPAA-covered entities for the eligibility, the claim status, the EFT, and the ERA transactions. Now, that third column, the ACA mandated health plan certification program, this is the program that was mandated by the Affordable Care Act, has not been finalized through a regulation as of yet. Now, our news on this is that in November of last year, 2015, HHS published a notice that stated that they expect to publish a new proposed rule on this ACA mandated HHS certification of compliance program in April of this year, 2016. And to quote that little notice, it said, this second proposed rule would revise the initial proposed provisions in response to public feedback received through the rule-making process. So if we see that rule in April or sometime this year, CAQH CORE will come together and will work with you all to draft public comment for any regulation that comes out. So look for that. And I'll just give a little bit of a side to this as well. HHS seems to be indicating through a number of public appearances that that April date may not be met. So we could probably expect a delay, and we may not see it next month. In fact, that's the sense that they're kind of giving off. All right. Let's go to, oh, there we are. So the two takeaways from that last slide, I apologize, is that the operating rules have been mandated, but core certification remains voluntary. Voluntary core certification until we see it in a finalized regulation. We all know that entities that are required to implement standards and operating rules have many different ideas of what it may mean to be compliant with those rules, and we often see the adoption of diverse and inconsistent approaches to testing whether they're compliant with those standards and operating rules. So although core certification has not been mandated by the federal government, we as an industry still need the ability to point to a specific standard set of documents that we can say demonstrate conformance with the operating rules and standards, and core certification with that certification testing provides that. An analogy would be the SAT standardized testing for colleges and universities. Now, there's no federal mandate, of course, for students to take these tests or for universities to require them, yet higher education has adopted them as standard testing framework because of the need for a third-party test that meets an industry agreed upon set of requirements. And in a like manner, core certification offers standardization of testing. And it can be considered standardization, as we have seen, because it has been developed and voted on by industry, and also because at this point over 250 certifications have been awarded. As a program, we think voluntary core certification is really the gold standard in how a certification program should be developed and administered. And this slide outlines some of the reasoning there. First, the actual requirements that are necessary for an entity to demonstrate conformance with the operating rules, the actual test questions, are developed by industry representatives through a CAQH core subgroup. Those requirements, those test questions, are then put through the same thorough review and voting process that the core operating rules go through. So this is industry deciding for industry what conformance actually means. Second, a third-party testing vendor, again, separate from industry representatives that develop the test and separate from CAQH core, is used to conduct the actual testing. And we'll hear from that core authorized testing vendor, EdFX, later in the program. Lastly, the last third wheel of this balance of powers is CAQH core that administers the program. And this includes authorizing that third-party testing vendor and giving a thorough review of the application and testing documents before awarding the seal. So a balance of power and some systems of redundancy create a solid certification program. This slide shows the types of organizations that can get core certified. Note that basically any entity, commercial or public, that is part of conducting eligibility, claim status, and or the EFT ERA transactions can become core certified. And if you think about the two ends of these three transactions, the provider and the health plan, they're often reliant on clearinghouses and vendor solution services and products to conduct the transactions. So the actual core certification testing is tailored differently for each of these four specific stakeholder categories, since the operating rules apply a little differently for each one. If you're a provider or a health plan, and especially if you're a provider or health plan that outsources a lot of your transaction functions, certification testing is a good way to make sure that your business partners are conformant with the rules and are applying the best business practices for efficient use of those standard transactions. It's the difference between your contractors saying that they are following the rules and them producing a document that says that they've taken a test that proves they're following the rules. It's like making sure your taxi driver has a driver's license. So ask your vendors and your clearinghouses whether they've undergone certification testing. We've had some conversations with organizations that say that they are interested in core certification, but they're struggling with getting leadership buy-in. So this might be a good slide to use if you need to convince others in your organization why core certification may be a good idea for your particular business model. Again, much of the value here is based on the idea that you are having an objective third party prove that you are using operating rules as they are meant to be used. That is, in order to find efficiencies in the administrative cost of healthcare. Another value here is the third-party conformance testing that we've talked about. Although core certification, again, is not mandated, the core operating rules are mandated, and core certification gives assurance that you and the business partners that are helping you with these transactions are being conformant. It's like H&R Block. You have to file taxes. Taxes are mandated by the feds. But using H&R Block is not mandated. But we sometimes use them or other accountants as expert third parties to make sure that we're doing things right. This slide summarizes some points we've made along the way. Administrative simplification will not work unless we get all the parties involved in the transactions. And this includes organizations that are not necessarily mandated under HIPAA to follow the standards and operating rules. If you're a health plan or maybe a TPA or a provider, it's a good idea to circle the wagons and make sure your vendors or other business associates are using those operating rules. And as for clearinghouses and vendors, vendor solutions and products, if you do become core certified or if you are already core certified, you'll want to tell your providers and all of your health plans, all of your clients, that they can take full advantage now of those operating rule efficiencies. As a value add, if you're a clearinghouse or a vendor, your core certification will also clear the way for your health plan or provider clients to become core certified themselves, and it will be easier actually for them because you've probably done all the heavy lifting already. Here's a nice slide that shows some of the stakeholders and companies that have actually been core certified. Taha, later in this presentation, will point you to a place on our website where you can see all of the core certified entities, and that's the place you'll want to look to see if your vendors or your clearinghouses or your health plans have been core certified. And with that, I'll turn it over to Drew with a polling question.
Great. Thank you very much, Matthew. And this question will piggyback a little bit off of the information that Matthew presented. And this is a new question that we started asking because this question really helps us help you, our audience. And first I will read the question, then I will launch the poll, and we'll pause for a brief moment for everyone to respond. So this question, our first of three, asks, in your organization's experience, what are the barriers to pursuing voluntary core certification at this time? So I will launch the poll, and we will pause for a brief moment for everyone to respond. And this is a select all that applies, so there might be more than one here. Go ahead and just check all that apply right on your screen, and we'll share the results when the poll is closed. We'll pause for about 5 more seconds. One more second, and I'll share the results. So now on your screen, you should be looking at the results. And we see that 73% said lack of resources. And this could be human, financial, time, other. Certainly all of us don't have those sorts of resources. Then 29% said just a lack of understanding. And that's very important for Jessica and I to know as CORE's education and outreach team. And then 42% voluntary core certification is not federally mandated. Certainly that could be a big issue. 14% say our systems have not been remediated to meet core operating rules. And then 29% said lack of management support or prioritization. And probably a few slides back, the slide that Matthew presented should help a little bit in that area. But Todd, do you?
Sure. So since the majority have said lack of resources, so I like later on in my presentation, I'll touch on kind of the planning process for core certification. And we have a variety of tools that can help prioritize resources, whether it's human, financial, and kind of how you need to remediate your systems. So in order to kind of better plan your available resources if you are interested in pursuing core certification. So I'll highlight that and where to find those tools later on in my presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Taha. And so we'll continue on with our presentation with Taha, and he'll go over the core certification process.
Thanks for the introduction, Drew. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the webinar today. Today, I'll be providing an overview of the core certification process, and we'll also walk through on how to navigate the CAQH website to find relevant information pertaining to core certification. The core certification page is accessible directly from the CAQH homepage. To access core certification content from www.caqh.org, users should hover over the core button or the tree image, which will then pop up a menu of links for course-specific content. The core certification link should be clicked next, which will then move users to the core certification landing page. Once at the core certification page, there are 4 content areas. Number 1 is the main core certification landing page, which provides an overview of the core certification program and the Section 1104 mandated certification process, which Matthew touched on earlier. Number 2 is the core certification process page, which provides step-by-step directions on how to navigate through the core certification process and also provides the available resources to undergo core certification. Number 3 is the core certified organizations page, which highlights those organizations that have completed or pledged to complete core certification. And number 4 is the core endorser page, which highlights organizations who support CAQH Core's mission and the operating rules, but do not themselves use, create, or transmit the eligibility, claim status, or EFT/ERA transactions. Today, I'll be talking more in detail about the core certification process page and the core certified organization page. Next up, I'll walk everyone through on how to navigate the core certification process page, showing everyone how this page is laid out and where to find important materials for those interested in pursuing core certification. The process page is divided into 4 distinct areas outlined by components. Component number 1 outlines information and links to materials related to planning and evaluating systems prior to beginning the core certification process. Component number 2 outlines information and links to materials related to signing and submission of a core pledge. Component number 3 outlines information and links to materials related to core certification testing. And component number 4 outlines information and links to materials related to the application process for the core seal. In the following slides, I'll walk through each of these 4 components in more detail. Component number 1 outlines the first steps organizations need to take when considering core certification. During pre-certification and system evaluation, organizations should review and understand the requirements of the operating rules and scope resources needed to adopt and implement the operating rules. The image on the right is a screenshot of content specific to component number 1 on the core certification process page. As you can see on the screenshot, CAQH Core offers a variety of resources to help organizations gauge their ability to adopt and become compliant with the operating rules. More specific, item number 6, the Analysis and Planning Guide is an excellent resource that organizations can use to create a project plan to complete any necessary remediations for any identified systems or software gaps. I'd also like to point out that all of these resources aren't made available for free. Component number 2 outlines the steps an organization needs to take when it has decided to pursue core certification. This second component is to sign and submit the core pledge in correspondence to the phase being certified. The intent of the pledge is to formally communicate an organization's commitment to pursue core certification. Pledge forms can be accessed by clicking on the Phase 1, Phase 2, and or Phase 3 hyperlinks shown in blue on the image on the right side of your screen. Further, you can see a sample of the core pledge form on the screen. The core pledge form must be signed by an authorized executive-level employee from your organization, typically C-suite level. Once the core pledge form is signed and submitted to CORE, organizations must complete core certification testing within 180 business days. Component number 3 outlines the steps an organization needs to take when undergoing core certification testing. This third component outlines steps and provides resources to help organizations navigate through the testing process. To complete testing, organizations must use the CAQH Core Test Suite in order to maintain standard and consistent test results. Core certifying entities should work with a core authorized testing vendor to perform tests based upon testing criteria specific to the entity stakeholder type. An organization will also have to complete different types of test scripts, which include signed attestations, document uploads, and transaction-based testing. To access links to the testing site from the CAQH Core Authorized Testing Vendor, scroll all the way to the bottom of the Core Certification Process page and click on the links below the Edifex icon as shown on the screen. We will hear more details about the process for core certification testing later in today's webinar from Edifex, the CAQH Core Authorized Testing Vendor. Component number 4 outlines steps an organization needs to take when applying for the core seal. This third component involves the submission of 3 sets of documents per each phase that an applicant is applying for. These documents include a core seal application form, a HIPAA attestation form, and a core seal fee. The core seal application form shown on your screen as the image on the right involves filling out contact information and stakeholder-specific information about your organization. The HIPAA attestation form shown on your screen as the image on the left involves an organization testing that is compliant with applicable HIPAA provisions. Like the core pledge form, this form must be signed by an authorized executive-level employee from your organization. Lastly, the core seal fee is based upon a stakeholder-specific fee scale. Note that this fee is a one-time cost for each phase of certification, and the scale is shown as the image on the top of your screen. Your organization can access links to each of these application materials by navigating to Component 4 on the core certification process page. So in review, the average time to complete core certification is between 3 to 6 months. But I'd also like to note that this time frame varies by stakeholder type depending on each individual organization type and resources made available. After an organization completes the 4 components of the core certification process that I had talked about earlier, CAQH Core will then begin its review of all application material submitted by an organization. During its review, Core reserves 30 business days from the receipt of a complete application for review, approval, and distribution of the core seal. So after an organization's core seal application is approved, CAQH Core would list that organization on its Core Certified Organization page as Core Certified. This page can be accessed by clicking on the Core Certified Organization link under the Core Certification submenu on the left pane of your web browser, as shown in the screenshot on the slide. And additionally, as you can see from the screenshot, you can view both Core Certified and pending to be certified organizations on the highlighted table. Navigation of the table is relatively simple. You can click on stakeholder-specific tabs, health plan, provider, clearinghouse, and vendor, to view the status of an organization certification by clicking on the appropriate stakeholder category. An organization is considered certified if there is no parenthetical around the phase number. And if there is a parenthetical around the phase number, that means the organization has pledged to become certified on that particular page. So we hope to see your organization on this list soon. And this next slide can be used as a cheat sheet, as it provides quick links to available resources and other organizations that have found to be helpful through the core certification process. I'd like to also point out that core staff is available by phone or email. So if you have any questions related to core certification, please feel free to reach out to us, and we would be glad to set up a time to talk to you. Thanks for your time today, and now I'll hand the call over to Drew for our next polling question.
Great. Thank you very much, Taha. And we are now at our second polling question of the webinar. And just like last time, I will read the question and then open the poll for everyone to respond. This question asks, how many of your business partners or the products or services you use are core certified? So I will launch the poll in just a moment here. And we will pause for everyone to respond. We'll take about 15 seconds. Pause about 10 more seconds. All right, I'll close the poll and share the results. And as you can see, the two largest percentages, 43 and 41% respectively, said some or I don't know.
And I think we have probably a statistical margin of error between the two of them, right? So it's probably equal amount of some and I don't know. Something that is interesting is the 5% that appear to know the answer to this question. So they're not a part of the I don't knows, but they say that only 5% know that all of their trading partners are core certified. And I think that's very interesting. I'm not sure whether to go as optimistic or pessimistic. Optimistic in the sense that maybe if we'd asked this question 2 or 3 years ago, that wouldn't have appeared at all. But also perhaps a little disappointing that only 5% know that all of their business associates are core certified. The I don't know, again, I would say whether you as a provider or a health plan or any of your organizations, whether you decide to be core certified or not, it's always a good idea to find out where your vendors and health plan clearinghouses are with respect to that. So that I don't know, we'd love to see come down, even if that doesn't mean that you yourself are coming in to get core certified.
Is it just a simple ask?
And also,
I think it's a simple ask, or
also, if you're not sure, you don't know, you can also check out the core certified organization page that I talked about earlier to kind of see if your trading partner is on that list of core certified organizations, or they pledged to be certified.
And I would take this question one more further. If you're a clearinghouse or a vendor, or even if you're a health plan, communicate with your providers or your health plan that you are core certified, so that they'll be able to answer a question like this, and they'll have that assurance that we talked so much about.
Great. Thank you guys so much. So we'll move on today, and we'll continue with our program with a presentation from CAQH Core authorized testing vendor, Edifex. But before we begin, I'd like to take just a quick moment to congratulate Edifex for being named the Best Places to Work Gold winner in the 2015 Best in Biz Awards. So very well done, Edifex. And our guest today is Ashish Gandhi, who is a Senior Project Manager at Edifex. Ashish, thank you very much for joining us today, and please go ahead.
Thank you, Drew, and thank you, Matthew and Taha, for setting up the context for core certification. I have been part of this CAQH Edifex partnership for long, and which has been supporting multiple organizations. So I'm more than happy today to be part of this webinar and walk you through to the core testing portal. Next slide, please. Yeah, before we begin the core testing portal walkthrough, just wanted to give you a brief introduction of Edifex presence in US healthcare. We hold a very vast experience in working with the top healthcare companies for their EDI and HIPAA compliance, which makes us the market leaders in EDI validations and compliance. Healthcare transaction, as you can see, we have spanned across all the healthcare transactions, and we have worked with more than 250 plus healthcare companies, and they have trusted us in their EDI validations. Next slide, please. Yeah. Even though Taha has touched upon this 4-step process, but I would like to reiterate here, based on our experience with working with multiple testing entities, this 4-step process, the step 1 is very, very important, because that's where actually you set up you understand the core rules, you go through the connectivity, set up your infrastructure. So I just want to reiterate here that P certification process is something that plays a very important role. And we, being Edifex, comes into picture on the step 3, which is a core certification testing. So once you're done with the step 1 and 2, you begin your registration with the core portal on the step 3. It's again a very simple UI-based self-service portal And once we receive your registration form, we approve it and then enroll to your respective programs. Next slide, please. Yeah. Moving on, once you have decided to go for core certification testing through Edifex portal, there's two ways you can come to our portal. One is what Taha has explained from the CAQH site. The other is you can visit the Edifex, www.edifex.com/login, where you can see the client login menu. And on the leftmost side, you can see a core login button. So that's where you begin your journey for a core certification testing on Edifex portal. Next slide, please. Yeah, so once you press the core login button, you will be presented with this page, which has various options. On the left side, you will see the registration request forms. This option will launch the registration wizard for phase 1, 2, and phase 3. Now, phase 1 and 2 are both hosted on the same portal. It's basically for the stakeholders, which deals with 270, 271, which is eligibility benefit inquiry and response, and an R 27677, which is a claim status request and response. Whereas phase 3 is for the stakeholders, which deals with claim payment advice, which is an 835 EDI transactions. On the right hand side, you can see the individual logins for phase 1, 2, and phase 3, which you can use to register with us. One important document that you can see as a hyperlink above is a quick start guide, which gives you very important information how you can navigate through the portal. We recommend the entities coming to our portal to go through this document so that they can understand the navigations on the phase 1, 2, and phase 3 portals. Next slide, please. Yeah. So moment you decide to register on the core portal, this is the account registration process. And these are the wizard, again, it's a self-service portal, and this is the wizard you will be presented with. It asks for your general details about the organization, your contact details, but the most important section on that on the registration wizard is the selection of the stakeholder types. So based on how you see your organization, how you want to get core certified, you select that particular core stakeholder type, and based on your selection of the core stakeholder type, will enroll to you a specific program, and that again, with the core pledge date, begins your journey of 180 days of core testing. Next slide, please. Yeah, so once you have successfully registered, this is how your home page will look like. It again provides you some important hyperlinks. Look where you can go to the core pledge, quick start guide, and again step-by-step core certification process. So once you go through these details and ready to start your testing, you can go through the program tabs, which will provide you with a detailed list of test cases you are enrolled to, and based on your selection of the stakeholder type. Next slide, please. So as I said in my previous section, you will be enrolled to various test tasks. So I would like to present you various test tasks that you will be going through the moment you start testing on the testing portal. The very first task will be the testing options task. This task basically presents you with various options, and you have to select one based on your business implementation. Like you are not a phase 1 certified and want to go for phase 2 or phase 2 certification, then you will select the appropriate options. Or you want to use with connectivity or without connectivity options, then you can select the appropriate options from this test case. And based on your selection of the test case or the options here, the further test cases will be enrolled to you. Next task, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So next category of testing task is connectivity related. This is most critical and very important task where the portal validates the implementation of entities for the core connectivity rules. It's again a very simple wizard-based testing, and details information is provided to the entity about the steps they need to perform to complete this task. For example, here you can see we are verifying a health plan or information source response to an invalid eligibility inquiry sent from our testing portal using a core prescribed HTTP MIME connectivity protocol with authentication method as username password. So it's again very simple wizard. You can enter your connectivity URL. You can select from the radio button the authentication you want to use, publish or enter your username and password and sender ID and receiver ID, and just press next. So once you press or hit next, our portal will send on your URL a invalid 270 request, and we will wait for the response. And based on your timely and a valid response, this wizard will pass or fail the test cases. And you can see the results on the screen itself, whether your test case has passed or failed. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's another category of task that you will see on the portal while testing, which is an upload task. This task category basically requires an entity to upload a supporting document against core rules. Like as shown in the screenshot, we are requesting an entity to upload a copy or image of the table of content from the stakeholders 276-277 companion guide. Again, detailed instructions are provided on how an entity can attach the table of content of their companion guide and the various formats that our portal supports. So once done, you can select the radio button partner testing steps complete, and it will come to us for review. And when we review it manually and approves it, this task will be marked as complete. Next slide, please. So this is how the last task in the testing looks like. Now this is very important, since this is what triggers us to know that you have completed your testing, wherein you select and you will select this task and make it complete. And we have provided some very valuable links here of for the testing entities. You can download those documents before you apply for course seals. So once you have downloaded those forms, you can mark this task as complete, and that will let us know, and our system will validate all the test cases, that whether you have passed all the test cases or not. And based on that, we'll generate a completion report, which we'll send to CAQH separately. So again, this is very important from a testing entity perspective, because this is a self-testing portal, and you have to trigger the process of completion. So this is the trigger for us, which will let us know that you have completed the testing. With this, we have covered the various type of testing tasks that entity will be presented during testing. Again, I have to reiterate, this is a self-testing portal, and it's a very simple UI-based wizard that will help you go through all the core rules, and you can validate your compliance against those rules. Next slide, please. Yeah, barring the test cases, there's an important feature available on the portal itself, where in case you are facing any issue or you need more information about anything on the portal or any of the core rules, you can simply go to this section and log an issue. This issue will come to us as an Edifex core support team, and we will make sure we'll respond back to you within 24 hours of the issue log date. And you can easily track that issue. As you saw in the screenshot, you can track the status, whether we have responded to you or not. So again, it's a very simple UI-based program that you can use. Next slide, please. Based on our experience, we like to share a few frequently asked questions that most of our entities ask us when they are doing their testing. First one being, are we exempted from phase 1, 2, 3 certification since they are outsourced? Well, you need to include the statement, rational statement, and the entities to whom you have outsourced need to be core certified. And based on that statement, we'll manually close those tasks, and you don't have to perform the applicable task. But there's still going to be few tasks that you have to complete yourself, and based on that rational statement, we'll be able to finish your testing on the portal and provide the details to CAQH to pursue your course seal. The next question that comes to us a lot of time is, we have completed our testing on the portal. Will we receive an email from Edifex stating that the testing has been completed so that it can be submitted to CAQH core along with the CAQH documents? Well, once you finish, as I show you in one of the screenshots, that once you finish your testing and you mark your last task as complete, that triggers us or let us know that you have finished your testing. And our portal automatically generates a completion report. But we share that report directly with CAQH. But in case an entity needs that report, they can let us know and we can share the copy at any time with them. The last question that I would like to share with you, how we can reach EDIFACT's core support team. Like, there are two ways. One is you can log an issue as shown in the previous slides. You can always log an issue while you're doing testing in case you want to have any question related to the testing task or the portal or in general regarding core rules too. You can use our SME experience that we have with this relation, and we will be happy to answer your questions. Or you can write straight away to info.corecertification@edifacts.com, and we'll be more than happy to answer your queries. Next slide, please. Last but not least, we encourage you to take advantage of some of our free resources that we offer. You can use our blogs that we have on www.edifacts.com/e, or you can use our core conformance or testing portal that brings to you various compliance solutions that we offer in addition to the course testing, which is free. And you could utilize, I'm sure you will utilize these sources and find it useful in your journey to operating rule compliance. This ends my section for core testing portal. Over to you, Drew, for the polling. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Ashish. And now we are at our third polling question and final polling question of the webinar. I will read the poll and launch for everyone to respond. This question asks, which benefit of core certification would be most important to your organization? We'll pause briefly. I will launch the poll, and we'll take just probably 20 seconds for everyone to respond. Take about 15 more seconds. Take about 5 more seconds. All right, I'll close the poll and share the results. And it looks like 53% indicated that it demonstrates conformance with the operating rules, followed by 22% says it improves business processes, which lead to greater efficiencies for our customers. And 12% indicated that it provides an objective assessment of our systems through the use of the industry-developed conformance requirements and a third-party tester. Matthew, what do you make of these results?
So I think the 53%, I'm glad to see that we've got a concern about conformance. Again, I would reiterate that the federal government has not mandated core certification. That being so, that third-party entity that's conducting the certification testing, that's EDIFACTS, having that objective neutral party doing the testing and a neutral objective party doing the review of the application, I think those are good things to promote and to support that first choice. That 22% of improved business processes, you know, I think we always want to keep in mind what the end goal here really is. We're looking to cut down on healthcare administrative costs. And so I'm very glad to see that, and I think that's something that you can bring to your customers and you can bring to your leadership, that in the end of the day, this is not just a good housekeeping seal. This also shows that we're probably cutting down, you're probably cutting down on a per patient, per claim cost of administrating that work. So, good.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. And we'll jump into the Q&A part of this webinar, the last 15 minutes we have here. And Jessica, please walk us through that.
Thanks so much. So we do have some time for Q&As. Please continue to submit your questions by typing them into the questions panel on your dashboard. We do ask that you identify your type of organization so we can better respond to your questions. So let's begin with the Q&A portion. So the first question looks like could be responded by CORE and EDIFACTS. So let me read the question. At what point would an organization register on the EDIFACTS portal? Can we register before we're ready to test? And the third part of the question is, are EDIFACTS portal identities transferable? In other words, if a staff changes, what do you need to do? Does the portal remain the way it is? So Matthew or Taha, would you like to take a first shot?
Sure. So as to what point would an organization register and get into EdFX's testing engine, I think you've seen from both Taha and Ashish's presentation that we present this as you send us a pledge and then you go do the certification testing. But that's not a hard and fast rule. And so especially if you're unsure about how close your systems really are to conformance, then you can go ahead and get into that EdFX portal, and you don't have to send in the pledge until you've swum around in there and you get a better sense of how far away your systems are. You know, I think it would probably ultimately be very advantageous for you to look at the actual testing task. And, you know, what we're talking about here is an open book test. So I use the analogy of the college SAT exams. This is the big difference here is that you can go in and see this test at any point, and it's free on the EdFX testing engine. So especially if you're thinking out your project plan and how long you think this is going to take, we find that the biggest bulk of time that's gobbled up is preparing your systems to make sure they're actually conformant. And so that testing, looking at those testing tasks in the EdFX testing platform will give you a good sense of how long it's going to take. I'm going to turn the other question to Ashish, and the question here, just to repeat, is are the EdFX portal identities transferable? And they use the example of what if they change staff, or what if they change the project manager in the middle of the project? How would they take over tracking the testing tasks?
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. So the way I look at it, we are working with an organization to get them certified. So, but definitely the staff is one who registered their account on the portal. But you always have options to add more user who actually going to test on behalf of organization. So in case there are changes in the staff, you can definitely enroll a new person. You're testing whatever, if it's in the mid, it's going to remain as is intact. So you can continue from where the other person left and continue with the testing. And we'll certify the organization, not the individual. So does that answer the question? I'm not sure, but I think that's what I understand the question, right?
Thank you so much, Ashish. And so for you, Ashish, or for Matthew, does this answer change at all if the person is a Medicaid, state or county Medicaid?
So for Medicaid agencies or any state, federal or state government entity, the core seal fee that I had talked about earlier, so the actual fee for core certification is free for state and federal organizations. And also to register and do the core certification testing with EdFX, that is also free. So all our available resources, certification testing, and your application fee is waived for federal and state government agencies.
Thank you so much. So the next question is from a vendor type organization, and they're asking what's the status of the phase 4 core certification.
So this is Matthew, and I'll go ahead and answer on behalf of EdFX as well on this. As most people know, the core certification test suite, which is the list of requirements that the industry came up with, which would prove conformance with Phase 4, was passed along with the CAQH core Phase 4 operating rules last fall. Since then, EdFX has been hard at work developing the actual testing engine for that. We'll go through testing of that platform over the next couple months, and we expect that mid-summer that entities will be able to go get Phase 4 certified. And the Phase 4 certification follows along the same processes that we've discussed for Phase 1 and 2 and 3 here. There's a pledge involved. There's the certification testing through EdFX, application, attestation. Everything that you've seen here applies to Phase 4 as well.
Thank you so much, Matthew. So the next question is, they're in their planning and gap phase, and they've submitted 5 questions, and the reply states that it's going to take 15 to 25 days to respond. The question is, can that response time be lowered?
So let me answer from CAQH core side, and then I'll turn it to Ashish. What is not completely clear from this question is whether where these questions were submitted. So from our standpoint, we can certainly, especially if you give us a little, urgency, we can certainly look to your questions about core certification and about operating rules. I think our 15 to 25 days is our default. What I would suggest with that is if you submit a question to CAQH at core@caqh.org, put a big sign that says certification, a couple exclamation points next to it, and that'll be sure to get to us very quickly. And then we should be able to, very good, yeah, we should be able to get to you. Again, we can't promise anything better than 15 or 25 depending on your technical aspects, but certainly easy questions we try to turn around within a day or so.
And the slide deck includes a phone number, so if nothing else works, give us a call.
Excellent.
So, Ashish, this was a question that was specific to CORE, but what if, you know, someone posted a question to EdFX and they really needed an answer fairly quickly? Do you have any tips?
Yeah, I think our SLAs are basically 24 to 48 hours to respond to a question. We respond very quickly, but in case you need urgent attention even quicker than that, we can definitely set up a call with our SME, and that can work out over the call what questions you have and respond back. But in case those questions are very technical, as Matthew said, where we in fact need to refer to CAQH, at times it takes little more time than that. But those are very few, or the frequency of that happening is very less, and normally we're able to resolve all the queries within 24 hours.
Thank you so much. So the next question is from a state Medicaid agency. So the question is, they don't have the ability to test using, you know, fake data. Do the testing suites take this into account?
So I have to speak directly to that question. I'd say that the testing suites do not take that into account. Certainly for phase 1 and phase 2, there's what we call our master testbed data, and that is fake data which has patient information which would test for the 270, 271, and the claim status transaction. However, I would also suggest that that not be the complete answer unless we sat down and talked to this state Medicaid. And certainly it looks like we've got their email here. So we'll shoot a question to this email, and if we can find a bit more about what some of those obstacles are. We've worked with a number of state Medicaids, and we know that there are some issues with working with the fake data. So if we can drill down a bit more about those details, we'll see about this particular situation.
Sounds good. Thanks so much. So the next question is about enforcement. The question is, what can we do if a core certified company believes that a core certified trading partner is not conforming to the CAQH core operating rules?
So great question, Jessica. So CAQH core has an enforcement policy, and the enforcement policy outlines that core certified trading partners can fill out what we have a formal complaint process for possible non-conformance of the operating rules. And it's a complaint-driven process that requires organizations to document demonstrating multiple instances of non-conformance with the rules, and for each phase of certification. So if you find that an entity is non-conformance or not compliant with the operating rules, you know, go on our website and you can look at our enforcement policy, or you can also shoot us a email, or you can give us a call on our phone, and we'd be glad to talk you through the process for enforcement.
Thank you so much, Taha. So the next question is, might be another one for you, Taha. If we're core certified on a phase of CAQH core operating rules, do we stand to lose that certification if we don't also certify on successive CAQH core phases?
So that's a great question also. So to answer the question in two parts. So first of all, we don't require organizations to get certified in successive phases. So it's up, we leave it to the business decision of each individual organization on how they proceed to get core certified. So for instance, if an organization is certified on phase 1, they're not required to get certified on phase 2 or 3, as core certification is voluntary. So that is up to the business decision of the organization. And to phrase it in a different way, the question, the enforcement policy that I talked about earlier, that can lead to a potential loss of a core seal based on the complaint and our findings of the complaint. So a core certification seal can be lost based off the complaint-driven enforcement process from CAQH core.
Thanks so much. So the next question I think might be for Matthew and Ashish. And the question is, why is testing required for core certification?
So I like this question, and hopefully some of our presentation today answered it. It's, again, just like the SAT. Having an actual test with very specific questions to meet conformance just gives that much more assurance that an organization is following rules. And if you think about the SAT, the question isn't to college students on the SAT, do you know geometry, right? There are very specific questions that are brought together through a group of expert educators which test for understanding of geometry. And we have the same thing here. These are actually specific tests based on specific questions that an entity must answer in order to have that assurance that they are conformant with the actual operating rules. Ashish, do you have anything to add to that?
No, well said, Matthew. I think I agree what you said. I'd just like to add, I think it's required because it's beneficial for both the parties, health plan, whatever. If it's a vendor, it's beneficial for them interacting with multiple entities. So it helps reduce the administrative cost, and definitely that's why I feel like working with various entities and our experience at EDIFEX, this is must-have for each and every organization, definitely.
Thank you so much. So I've got one that's a quick one, I think. So what agency handles compliance enforcement?
Good. Excellent question. The agency that handles the compliance enforcement, which also handles the regulations which came out of here, is the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services under HHS. And just so we're clear, CMS we usually think about for Medicare and Medicaid, and when we see the regulations coming out of there and the compliance coming out of there, we think it's only having to do with Medicare aspects or Medicare providers and Medicaid. But there's a little corner of CMS that does these administrative simplification requirements and enforcement, which apply, of course, to all HIPAA-covered entities, including their own Medicare and Medicaid programs. So that's CMS, and it's actually a little group called the National Standards Group. And to tag on to what Taha was saying about our own enforcement policy, the federal government has an enforcement policy as well with these operating rules. So if you find that you're working with a health plan or a clearinghouse that you find is not compliant with the operating rules or standards, and you find that they're not core certified either, then definitely go to the National Standards Group. If you Google Administrative Simplification Asset Tool, ASSETT, I believe, Asset, that'll bring you right to a little portal where you can upload a complaint about a HIPAA-covered entity if you find they're not taking the operating rules. And just like inside baseball a little bit, we know that CMS is taking enforcement of administrative simplification requirements more and more seriously. In the last year or so, they've created a division dedicated primarily to enforcement of these rules. And we know, of course, that they're working on a regulation on the certification which would enforce these rules. So we seem to see a shift post-Affordable Care Act of moving towards more and more serious concern with the compliance with these rules. So CMS's Asset Tool, that's the place where you go.
Thank you so much, Matthew. And it looks like we are out of time for today. I'd like to leave you with some takeaways on this next slide, and also thank our speakers and our listeners for taking time out of your day to join us. Go back one slide. I would like to point out at the bottom of slide 40 here, if you click on that hyperlink, we have a brand new resource for folks interested in finding out about the status of state and county Medicaid that are certified or in the process of testing for certification. So if you click on that hyperlink, you can get to a brand new dashboard that's interactive and can get you a lot of information. So on the next slide, If you have questions or are interested in learning more about core topics, here's a bunch of links and information so that you can communicate with the different parts of CAQH Core, not just the certification staff. The next slide, I'd like to show you information about our next educational webinar. Please click on that hyperlink and register. And also, this information is not on the slide, but it's hot off the press. I'd like to let you know that CAQH is hosting a webinar on the CAQH Health Index on Wednesday, March 30th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Go to the CAQH.org website and register for that webinar if you're interested in learning how much business transactions are really costing the healthcare industry. For the next slide, I'd like to thank you once again and also let you know that a recording of this session will be available on our website in the next 24 hours. Also, please take a moment after the session to fill out a short evaluation survey. And finally, on the last slide, we have included additional information on the different types of test scripts that we hope will be useful to you. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.